Well folks, Xanderjam 4 is in the books. We had 84 people join and 23 people submit a game. The theme was Opposites Attract, and you guys did a great job. In this video, I'll be playing through the top 10 games as voted by you, and we're starting right now. Hot Water by Epic Brian88 is a drag and drop game where you have to keep a drop of water and a flame apart for as long as possible. The goal is to get the highest score possible, with the speed of the objects increasing the longer you survive. I really like the colour palette. It was setting off some Game Boy nostalgia vibes for sure. However, I discovered a sneaky way to get a high score. If you just click and hold one object, you can simply drag them around the screen until the other object becomes so fast that it's game over. When playing by the rules, however, I noticed that the collision or click detection was a little hit and miss, which was frustrating because sometimes the object didn't pick up when I clicked it, causing me to lose. I would add some walls into the level for the player to navigate around, and maybe a system where you have to keep them apart for a certain amount of time to reach the next level. Opposite Attraction by John Rask is a game of magnetic attraction, where you have to join the south and north ends of a magnet by carefully navigating a glowing 2D platform world. The glow effect reminds me of Minima, or Minima 2, which is arguably the better of the two. The music is fitting, and I loved the theme interpretation. With Opposites Attract, I was expecting some magnet-based games, but I loved how you use the north and the south ends to create obstacles in the game. You could have a north magnet that pulls you towards danger as an alternate game mechanic, but either way, it was really well done. Some juicy sound effects would be a great addition, especially when dying. It gets hard pretty quickly, so perhaps a little more attention to the difficulty curve. The disappearing and reappearing blocks were frustrating at times because it appeared that there was no way to tell when they would reappear or disappear. You had to kind of memorize the sequence and then time your jumps accordingly. Moving from the keyboard to the mouse to retry is a little cumbersome, especially when I died so many times. Squared In by The Hooded Olive is a platform adventure where you have to pair up opposite shapes. Your goal is to get your square to the circle, but changing your shape to match the doors along the way. It reminded me of the retro platformers of the old Atari system, which is no bad thing. There was a great use of music and sound effects, which really complemented the game and gave it a nice chilled vibe. By having a character that can change shape really lends itself to the puzzle element options in the game. I love the shadow effect. It really gives the game a mood and brings the level to life. Some of the collisions were a little unforgiving. Perhaps give the player a couple of pixels grace when detecting collisions, as sometimes I felt like I was right next to a green area, and yet the game has still put me back to the start. Pushing the crates is quite a slow process. I'd increase the speed of this a little to help the game flow. SHPRX by Clonethirteen. Wow, the level of carnage this game serves up when you reach the higher levels is insane, and I mean that in a good way. The game is so simple, yet so satisfying to play. You simply control the player sprite with A and D, steering left and right. The shooting is automated and gradually becomes more powerful the further into the game you get. I love how right from the start you tell me the goal. Reach level 10, okay, got it, now let's play. The game is so intuitive. Pick up the white shapes to set off bombs, missile command style, and pick up the coloured shapes to increase health. At first, it's quite easy to survive as the health pickups are more plentiful than the enemies. But as the game progresses towards level 10, the heat is definitely turned up a notch. At times, on the higher levels, I felt a little out of control, as there was simply so much going on at the same time. I was either picking up health or bombs or hitting enemies, but all the while it didn't detract from the enjoyment. I love the levels of polish you've added. The enemies of the same colour as the player didn't give chase, which fitted the theme well. I would have liked to have had a little more control over the weapons. I didn't mind not controlling when or where I was shooting, but being able to switch between guns would have been great. Also, if you add multiple guns with their own ammo, it would have given me another item to move after in game, especially if I saw an ammo pack to my favourite weapon on the other side of the screen. Everything in this game was well thought out, from the chiptune soundtrack to the colour palette, and I thoroughly enjoyed playing. Great effort. Contragauge by Marlin Media is a drag and drop strategy game, and its simplicity is brilliant. Simply stop the positive and negative charges colliding. At the start of each level, colour-coded positive and negative charges spawn in and start making their way towards their counterpart. I really think we need to add a new category to the ratings for best title screen just because of this game. The music was intoxicatingly wonderful, and even though it was repetitive, it reminded me of Tetris for some reason. I think the repetitive nature of the music really helped keep you in the zone when things started to get hairy. I liked the addition of the little lifelines, but hovering over them in-game is dangerous, especially if you're a slow reader like me. I like how you assign these to the 1 and 2 keys. It makes for fast use. I'd love it if you made a giant hand sprite to replace the cursor and made the collision detection slightly more favourable to the player, as when things started to get frantic, it was frustrating missing the objects when clicking. I also noticed that when you clicked on a sprite and held the mouse button down, the sprite would continue to move even if you were moving the mouse. Perhaps disable the movement of the charges if the player is holding down the mouse button. Overall though, this game was a home run of a jam game with the theme opposites attract, and I really enjoyed playing it. Herding Cats by FoozleCC is a game like no other. What starts out as a cute pixel adventure between two pups saving kitty cats turns into a pumpkin bullet assault battleground. The only question is, how many poor kitty cats can you save from this pumpkin hell? There's so many good things to say here. I love the art, and especially the animations of the farmers when loading the catapults. The music fits the game perfectly too, and the frantic nature of the task at hand is wonderfully portrayed in the scatty nature of the cats and the gameplay. I love the targets on the ground with the countdown letting you know when the pumpkins were going to land. Maybe at times it was a bit too frantic, as those darn kitty cats kept unfollowing me if I moved too far or too fast from them. Using both hands at the same time was really hard. I kept sending lefty and righty the wrong way all the time. It was driving me nuts. Often I'd just focus on moving one pup to the safe zone, only to come back to the other and find that all the kitties had been obliterated as a result of my neglect. An unsettling feeling, to say the least. But I did really enjoy playing, and it's always a pleasure to see what FoozleCC can get Construct 3 to do in his games. Veg Patch Wars by Frozen Well is a mashup of two game styles, two opposite game styles. I see what you did there. It's effectively a farming simulator combined with an action-style fighting game. You have to plant your seeds and tend to your crops as they work their way through each stage of growth until it's time to harvest. But you have to do this while fending off wave after wave of alien slugs that are looking to eat your prized veggies. I love how simple the controls are considering you've mashed two different games together. To have just two buttons to farm and fight is very slick. The attack could have targeted enemies in all four directions. Because of the 8-directional movement, I often found I had to reposition myself before attacking, which left me vulnerable and resulted in me getting hit. I also think the slugs should either attack in waves or a short period between them, so you could tend to your crops, or perhaps make a turn-based game, as this would add an entirely new strategy element. Overall though, this game was great, and I played it a number of times to try and get all the crops available to me growing in the patches. Particle Attraction by Ryan DS is a game that gives you a very clear objective right from the start. Don't explode was the very concise instructions the game gives you upon starting, which is good advice for someone stuck inside of a particle accelerator. You have to destroy opposing coloured particles, keeping the perfect balance so as not to explode. You can switch between colours and absorb particles for score multipliers. I love the concept so much, it really nails the theme, and I don't know much about particle acceleration, but even so, I still found the game fun and easy to understand what I had to do. I love the simplistic art style and the lines that are created as a path behind each particle. This was a really nice touch. The music was great and the sound effects fit the game well. At one point I stood still, not doing anything, and I kept getting score multipliers. My WSD movement got disabled on one playthrough, and I'm not sure if it was a bug or if something happened in-game that disabled me. The movement, I thought, could be a little quicker. Not much, but maybe just a little. This would help me avoid the incoming particles more easily. Overall though, a solid entry to Xanderjam 4. Cadaver Clash by Spacespy is a game that ticks all the boxes. A perfect retro art style, perfect music and sound effects, and the difficulty curve is spot on. It's the graveyard shift at the graveyard. And tonight you will be visited by 3 ghosts. Well, in all honesty, you'll be visited by a lot more than that. For some reason, these spirits from the dead want nothing more than to kill you, so you can experience the pain and torment they've been through. Luckily, you have a trusty weapon, and aren't afraid to go down without a fight. The retro music and evil laugh at the start was so good and genuinely made me smile. The art is fantastic and the colour palette works perfectly. To give the eerie graveyard feel, I was playing through the first couple of waves and thought, gee, I hope there's some enemy variation, and then, like the game had read my mind, we see some different types of enemies. I really like knowing how many waves are coming, so putting wave 1 of 10 in the HUD really motivates me to try and beat the game, and also gives me a sense of progression each time I get a little further. The only thing I would suggest to change would be the 1 life system. It's so frustrating going back to wave 1 after taking 1 hit. I'd give the player 3 lives or a small HP bar before making them start over, especially considering when you introduce a new enemy type, it's not always apparent what their attack pattern is, and you often get caught off guard and then have to restart. The controls are simple and the gameplay is smooth and enjoyable. Everything moves at just the perfect speed, and the level of polish from the screen shake to the particle effects are so well done. What more can I say? A great game and I really enjoyed it. As you know, I invite a special guest judge to come and pick their favourite game from the jam. This time, it was Sid Fish. You may know him from games such as Pushy Worm and Evo Blocks.
My favourite game of Xanderjam was SHPRX by Clonethirteen. I had a super fun time playing this game and it was a standout for me. You play as this little round ball with the objective of surviving 10 levels of onslaught from other random enemies. The character automatically moves forward and shoots, but you control the turning. It makes for a simple to play but hard to master game loop. The game sounds and looks great, but the amount of juice added just takes us to the next level. I also appreciated that there were a couple of different ways to defeat the enemies, and although the gameplay often got intense, there were several periods of downtime thrown in to help you recover and restore your health. Awesome job, Clonethirteen.
Shapeshifter in Love by Jet Simon is the public vote's #1 pick for Xanderjam 4. And for good reason. Let your host, Jeff Throbmuscle, pair you up with a hot date. A hot date that's the complete opposite of you. That's the premise, and it works very well with the theme. Your goal is to shapeshift yourself to appear as opposite as you can to your mystery date. How do you know what your date looks like? You ask, of course. Ask 10 classic dating show questions like, if I were a popsicle, how would you lick me? Do you like the dentist? And how would you describe your hair in 1 sentence, to name a few? After asking a series of questions, you must decipher what your date looks like and change your own appearance to what you consider to be the opposite of them. You score points at the end of the round based on how opposite you look to your date. This game is truly hilarious, well polished with great art and music. A worthy winner, so congratulations, Jet Simon.
perfect opposite.
The last thing we got to do before we wrap this thing up is my personal favourite game from the Jam, and that is Cadaver Clash by Spacespy. Well, that wraps up the Best of the Jam video. I will be making a second video with the rest of the Jam games and my playthroughs coming shortly on the channel. In the meantime, head on over to itch because Xanderjam 5 is now live, Autumn Jam, or as you call it in America, Fall Jam, but that sounds too much like Fall Guys, so I'm going to say Autumn Jam. It's over on itch, there's a link in the description. Get on over, get signed up, and I'll see you there.